We will try to address all the questions as they present themselves, but if not, we'll get to them at the end. And if we don't get to all the questions, we'll address them in a recap of this presentation. If you experience any difficulties or have any comments throughout this presentation, you can send us a message through the chat feature. And at the end of the presentation, there'll be a 2-question survey. We appreciate you taking a minute to provide us with that feedback. This session is being live streamed in our exclusive Young Lawyers Beyond Borders LinkedIn group, and will be recorded and posted on our website so that you can refer back and share with your colleagues. As mentioned, this session is part of World Law Group's 3-week e-conference, and there is still time to sign up for the sessions over the next 2 weeks. Our practice and industry groups will also hold regular group meetings throughout the year, and if you're not already a member of a group, you can join on your profile through the World Law Group website. With that, I will now pass it over to our moderator, Mia. Oops.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome again to the 2020 World Law Group Fall E-Conference, which is the very first E-Conference I have attended over so many years. And welcome again to this special session, which is the Great Migration, Engaging the Young Lawyers in a Work from Home Model. My name is Mia Hentugaya. I am with Sisip Salazar, Hernandez, and Gatmaitan, the Philippine member of the World Law Group. So as far as the World Law Group is concerned, I am an oldie. I've been around a while. So, and I think that was the reason why I was asked to moderate this. But I would say even as a real oldie in terms of years, I have seen a lot of natural disasters, human-made disasters, the Asian financial crisis, the collapse of the housing market in the US. But as respects COVID-19, this pandemic, I am not prepared for that. And I have one word for this, what we're going through. It's unprecedented, even in my close to 7 decades of my existence on this earth. So it is the first, I think, major global upheaval that has impacted on the life of the young lawyers, the younger generation, and will no doubt leave indelible imprints in their lives as much as it is leaving imprints on our own. So when the pandemic struck and we were forced to work from home, we had to maximize our reliance on technology to be able to continue doing business. While I touched the keyboard of my very first desktop computer when I was already middle-aged, our young lawyers, the young generation, by the time they were born, they were also already mobile phones. And I'm willing to bet they will not know, perhaps not even recognize, a rotary telephone, right? All they know is the okay. But just because these young lawyers in our law firms, in our outfits, are tech savvy, does it translate necessarily into better adjustment in the work from home mode? Are they also anxious the way probably I, as an oldie, am anxious about the change in technology, the way we approach work? What is it that they miss? I miss my colleagues. I miss coffee in the pantry. I miss popping up into the room of a partner and simply asking a question that is bugging me. Is that the same with our young lawyers? What about the socials, the mentoring, the learning process? Is that still going on? So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a panel of youngies. As I said, I am the oldie in this group. So we have 3 wonderful, talented youngies today. And I would start with the introductions with Joseph. Joseph is a friend, a former colleague in Sisip Law. He is a true citizen of the art world. From collecting art, he has transformed into being a curator for a few shows in Manila and Cebu in the Philippines. And after the pandemic, he plans to have a more active role in the art world and perhaps also be more hands-on in the children's homes that he so avidly supports. Beyond the art world, Joseph is the general counsel of Aboitiz Power, part a business unit of the Aboitiz Group of Companies, a local conglomerate that traces its roots to Spain because of the Spanish family that um, founded it, and heavily invested now in infrastructure, power, food, land, banking, finance. Joseph, what else?
Mhm.
Many
You
others. You're coming in choppy. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Joseph Trilliana Gonzalez from Manila, Philippines. Joseph, thank
Hi,
you.
good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me on this program. I hope you get something useful from what I have to share tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, Ashley, can we have the slide, please? Okay. Our next panelist is the head of litigation of Davis. He is based in Davis, which is the World Law Group member in Quebec, and Luis is based in Montreal. He is the head of their litigation, a very seasoned litigator, and his write-up includes that in his portfolio, you should be seeing him in practically all of the more recent M&A litigation, securities litigation. He is also involved in white-collar investigations and other things. Now, in his spare time, if he still has any spare time, Luis is involved in a nonprofit organization which provides at least 300 meals every day to children in the underprivileged areas. Now, Joseph, you have to forgive me because I don't speak French. So I am almost sure I am going to mangle this. You are the chairman of Grand Manger Sorry, you have to mention that yourself.
No problem.
And,
It's called Garde Manger pour tous. It's essentially food for everybody.
oh yes, thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, we have Louise Martin O'Neill of the law firm Davis based in Montreal.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mia. I'm pleased to meet you today, and I hope we'll be able to share useful insight.
Thank you. And now we have, of course, Wen. Wen is a principal associate in Quatre Casas based in Barcelona. Wen has a corporate and M&A practice and teaches also in ESADE, SADE, Business and Law School. She is a true blue youngie. She admits that. And because she is glued to her two terminals every day. See, I told you, these are the tech-savvy people among our midst. And she made a New Year's resolution this year to be a little more active, but unfortunately, COVID-19 shelved that plan without even her consent. So while we have yet to find out in the course of the session what Wen has to has thinks really about the work from home mode, her two bunnies loves the setup because she is spending more time at home with them. So ladies and gentlemen, Wen Cheng of Quatre Casas based in Barcelona.
Hi, morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. I'm first of all, many thanks for having me today with all of you, and I'm thrilled to participate in this session. And I do really hope that you can enjoy this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are ready to roll, so to say. Ashley, can we have, Ashley did mention that we are having a survey as we move on. This is our way of making the session a little more interactive. Ashley, can we have the first survey, please? Okay. So may we encourage the participants to please respond to the question, and we will flash the answers in a little bit. Ashley, how much time do we have for this?
I'll give you another 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you very much. So perhaps while we are waiting, okay, so we're ready to roll. So my first question to the panel is, when Luis, because both of you are in law firms, pre-pandemic, did your firm support a work from home arrangement? Was that a formal policy in your law firms, or what is more of an informal? When can we start with you, please?
Yeah, sure. I would say that yes, definitely. Cuatro Casa supports work from home arrangements, and actually, it's been like, how to say, a bit shame because we didn't get the opportunity to formally implement work from home policy because COVID got us first. We have been carrying out during the last 3 years pilot work, flexible work program, which we started in 2017 because, you know, already in 2016, it was set out in Cuatro Casas a strategic plan that by 2020 we would have flexible working program. And interesting thing is that the first year we launched the pilot in 2017, that we had over 100 professionals participating in that pilot, and I was one of that members. And we had such a positive feedback from that program that the next year the number of participants increased to 200 lawyers, and the year after it increased to 240. So yeah, that was amazing. You know, even though we didn't get the chance to formally approve work from home policy, the results of the pilot program showed that by introducing flexible working measures, we can be more flexible, more productive, and I would say even more importantly, to have a better work-life balance.
Okay, very important for Youngie, the work-life balance. You know, what about you, Luis? The question again is pre-pandemic, because we were all forced to go to work from home. Pre-pandemic, did Davis have a did it support work from home arrangements?
Mia, thank you for this. We had some measures in place, no formal policy. We've historically been a policy adverse type of firm. So like we have many traditions, but little policies. We've made over the last few years a concerted effort to allow people to get better equipped at home. It was mostly driven in order to allow them to finish their day at home, quite frankly, try to avoid the long hours in the office in the evening. So we essentially gave a budget to younger lawyers, to associates, allowing them to purchase materials so that they would be equipped and able, essentially to finish their day at home. Aside from that, we didn't really have a formal policy. Some people on a very informal basis would work from home on a Friday, but there was nothing really formal implemented along those lines.
Okay, thank you. I was just reminded the survey came out. Wow. Ashley, I think we have like 20. Ashley, is it possible to come up to show again the survey? There you go. So yes, 69%, let's say 70%. Wow, it's written policy. So yes, an unwritten policy. I think that is where both Davis and perhaps Cuatro Casas would come in because they were trying to address the flexible work hours, and only 23%, neither written nor written. So thank you very much for the survey. Back to the question, Joseph, you have an in-house legal department. Did you also observe some flexible work hours? Interesting to note that in the case of Luis, they just wanted their people, their lawyers, to be home. So, okay, so that's the start, the seed of work from home. What about with Avoid This Power?
Yeah, that's interesting, Mia. We did have a formal work from home policy company-wide pre-pandemic, but it was only meant to be once a week.
Okay.
And it was still an experimental phase, but it was very important for me at the time because some law firms in the Philippines were already trying to attract young talent and recruiting them by saying, "Hey, we have a work from home policy." So to match that, I was using it as a recruitment tool, and I was saying, especially to women applicants, "Hey, we have a work from home policy. You can go home once a week and take care of your kids if you come to work for us."
Great. So I think all of you essentially, for different purposes, with Davis, it was really to keep the lawyers home as early as they can. When that was a rather, a pilot. And of course, interesting, Joseph, that you use it as part of your recruitment tool. So we move a little forward. When the pandemic struck, all of us had to work from home. So Luis, how was the shift? You already had the hardware, you had the software. Your practice is litigation. Work from home means you can't go to the courts. You don't go out to take your depositions. What were the steps that you took in that case?
Well, from a firm-wide perspective, we scrambled a bit, but were quite successful in essentially equipping everybody, not only the lawyers, but also all the support staff, the assistants, paralegals, with computers. And it was done in a matter of a few days. We've been blessed by of having the technology team that we had. So, like, from that standpoint, everything was pretty much seamless, and I think communication-wise, we had the right tools. The courts essentially stayed closed. There was that initial period of 2-3 weeks where everybody asked themselves, is there still going to be civilization by the end of May? After that 3 weeks, essentially the courts started to reopen for urgent matters. The commercial courts were quite effective. And we essentially did hearings through video conferencing and those tools. And that continues up to today. So we also started doing depositions by video conferencing. So from a work standpoint, I think that ultimately it picked up gradually. And I've had many discussions with people around the world, and I think it followed the same issues. Where it was more difficult for us, and I think we've been able to manage, was to make sure that the cohesion of the group would remain the same. Essentially making sure that everybody keeps together, remains part of the group, remains part of the team, and feel that they're not alone, irrespective of whether they have a large family or they're alone in a small apartment in the middle of downtown with nothing around. So it was really making sure that we would keep the cohesion. We started having daily phone calls every morning at 8:30. Mm-hmm. Also sending the implicit message that, work starts at 8:30. So, and it also, I think, was quite helpful for the younger lawyers, essentially, to have an anchor, something to start the day with, being able to have some 20 minutes water cooler conversations. Then gradually we integrated more contents because there are limits to conversations about pandemic. And after a few months, when we realized that essentially the anchor was all set and people were used to, then we moved to different type of schedule. But having regular meetings is really, for us, was critical.
Okay, so I think I get from you the routine. There was it was important to still keep the routine. Okay.
Yes. There's an amazing book called The Power of Habit that I encourage all of you to read. I think it was part of the thinking.
I think I would love to have a rah-rah pep talk, at the height of the quarantine with my coffee. So great. When in your case, you mentioned already that Cuatro Casas had a pilot project since 2017, and the numbers of the participants just keep on rising and rising. Did that mean that in essence, your firm did not have to do anything drastic at all when
Yeah.
everyone, including us, eventually had to really shift to work from home. Was that the case with you?
Yeah, I think that that was actually the case because, as we said, in our case, all the professionals, lawyers, assistants, paralegals, and all the administration team, we were properly equipped. We had all the tools necessary for start working from home. And I would say that perhaps the only change is that no, is that before COVID, the work from home arrangement was that we could work remotely for up to 20% of our time, and now we are basically working all time from home or remotely. But in terms of work, yeah, I think that we were able to shift quite easily from work from the office model to a work from home model. And as just Luis said, we were also blessed with a great tech support team, and I'm sure that things would have been a bit more challenging if it wasn't if it wasn't for them. And yeah, I would say that everything was went pretty well in terms of work, and keeping apart on everything that refers more on how the market work. But other than that, everything was right.
Yeah, and I think Cuatro Casas had the benefit, of course, of, I should say, the experience, from 2017 to 2020, that's easily going 4 years. So a lot more people were getting used to the work from home arrangements. Joseph, you're running an in-house department. Do you see any difference from the experience of either Luis or Wenwen with respect to your group?
Well, I would think of it more Mia, in terms of a difference between how I would relate to the young lawyers before the pandemic and after the pandemic. Now it's harder to read people, and I don't get visual cues. I don't sit with them in a meeting, so I don't know whether what I'm saying makes sense to the young lawyers, or they're just too scared to react, or they're actually hating me every second, but they can hide it on and close off their camera and close off their microphones and laugh at me behind my back. So there's that difficulty.
Okay, good point.
It's been a challenge, to tell you the truth. But we soldier on. We try to deliver the end product. Try to be professional about it.
Okay.
We'll see if it works.
Yes, I know. I miss that. When I teach now, before I would pace around in my room, I can sense, you can see the body language. When you can relate with this, when you teach, but when in a Zoom, it's very limited body language that I can see compared to a room. I think, Ashley, we're up for our next survey. And the question, of course, is what were the biggest hurdles in your shift to the work from home mode? Choose the top 3 applicable to you. So far, what I can see is, I think for Luis, that was the cohesion was a very important part, which I think we all miss. Not being able to see each other physically or face to face. So I shared the same thought with Joseph also on that. So
yes, it's cohesion, and as Joseph mentioned, it's essentially it's teaching, it's sharing the culture of the organization, is making sure that everybody learns at the rhythm that they typically do. There's a lot of what you learn which is not essentially under being told what to do. It's by osmosis, is looking at how things are being done. It's being in the room when you live live experiences. It's being around more senior people and you see how they react, how they behave, and you're missing all that working from, or a large part of it working from home. So the challenge is, how do you compensate for that? How can you make sure that the younger generation, like those who begin, will learn like that part of the business, which is critical, and of the profession, which is critical.
Okay, now that you've raised that point, actually, Luis, I would like to. Oh, there you go. So hardware and gadgets immediately available at home. That's 29%. That shares the same level. Oh, policy guidelines preparation and general reluctance, delayed reaction to shift. That's very interesting. I'm wondering whether the general reluctance and delayed reaction to shift speaks for my generation rather than the younger ones. Difficulty in communicating the change, technical support. Well, that's very nice, very low at 7%. That means to say, law firms, the participants, and the law firms of the panelists here are pretty prepared for this. So hardware, gadgets, policy, guidelines, preparation, and reluctance, followed by difficulty in communicating the change together with counterpart, client delay in shifting to new platforms. Training for new software? No. Selection of platform? No. Great, because thank you probably to Zoom, WebEx, Microsoft Teams. They were just waiting for us. So good. That sort of, for the participants at least, there seems to be some, the same difficulties or absence of difficulties, if you will. Now, back to Wen. As a youngie in this panel, I like to call you guys the youngies. What was the best thing for you for the from the work from home? You started talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, I think that now I can use much more efficiently my time. I don't have to waste my time on commuting or traveling for a meeting, crossing from one side of the city across to the other side, always rushing. Instead, I can use this extra time for planning better my daily to-dos and
Good.
finish earlier. And yeah, and I also think that clients value this positively because we are no longer charging them for time we used to spend traveling. So yeah.
Joseph, are you listening? We're not talking billable hours here. You save, clients save in billable hours from shuttling from meeting place to meeting place. But when I'm curious, what's the worst thing about work from home?
Perhaps the loneliness. Sometimes I do really miss my colleagues. I miss our coffee breaks or social related activities and events. But I know that this is not a problem that comes from the work from home model, but it's because of the COVID pandemic. So yeah, perhaps that's the point. Sometimes that you don't feel connected at all with your team.
Notwithstanding the Zoom, the mobiles, Viber, text messages, Messenger, notwithstanding that for a young like you?
That's not
No.
enough. Perhaps we are like, I don't know.
Okay.
We like to, to have a more physical approach. Yeah, here in Spain, we like to be more.
Coffee in the pantry or in the kitchen with physically so different. Now,
Exactly.
Joseph, was there any particular silver lining? I know you have a very young team in the department, so probably you don't have to deal with all these like me or your former mentors in my office. So, but your group straddles both projects, which is like win-win, and you also handle the adversarial aspects of your operations. Was there any distinctive difference? Can you see any difference in how your project teams behaved or reacted to the work from home versus say, your litigators or those that who have to deal with, say, regulatory agencies? Do you see any difference at all?
I think the litigation team is gonna kill me, but their workload sort of lightened because for a long while here in the Philippines, most of the courts were closed.
Up to now.
Up to now. So And if they were open, it was only for limited hours, and it was only for the purpose of postponing more hearings to a further date. So there was less load for them to carry and to manage. Whereas the projects team, their projects were going full steam ahead, and there was a slew of new regulations coming out every day from all the government agencies. So all we were doing was trying to catch up with all these agencies. What were the new department orders? What were the new executive orders? What were the new regulations that we had to apply to our existing projects? So that became more frenetic. It became more frantic, trying to deal with new regulations, bringing in people from abroad, our specialists, our experts, and managing government agencies, and having to get special exemptions for our visitors from abroad. And going into our plants, we had to come up with new regulations saying, moving forward, you have to comply with this new policy of quarantine or tests or isolating yourself. And it was also so much of a mess. So I think the projects team essentially really felt brunt of having to adjust to the pandemic.
Is that still going on now that we have moved to a GCQ, a general community quarantine? Has that sort of improved? So in the meanwhile, what does your litigation team do? I mean, it seems so imbalanced, Joseph. One group running around like I don't know what, and the other group perhaps not quite doing enough because they don't want to, but because of circumstances.
Well, the silver lining I see, if you ask me that question, is we haven't really encountered new cases to defend against, and we also we've been very, very leery about approving new litigation to be filed against counterparties, because where will it go if we file a case now? So at the same time, there are several cases that we have where we're trying to enforce a remedy, and we can't be, it's essentially suspended for the past 8 months, 9 months. So in that sense, we're also trying to, the group's trying to be creative about solutions, and trying to think ahead of what will we do when this is lifted, and how will we scramble to make sure that we get ourselves in the same position as we were 9 months ago.
Okay, so probably we can compare the experience. Luis, you're the head of your litigation group. You supervise many young lawyers. What was the most positive reaction from your young litigators? Notwithstanding, because probably in your case, it was a very short period of time that they were away from court hearings. So and you seem to be very much in touch with the young ones. So what is perhaps the most positive reaction from your young lawyers on the work from home arrangement?
Well, we've been away from court hearings for several months, except in urgent matters. So like our group lived a little bit what Joseph's team has lived. There were obviously like many files to prepare nonetheless. So some of the work slowed down. There was some pandemic litigation to compensate for. And ultimately, the group was able to remain somewhat busy. The reaction of the everybody, the elders and the youngsters varied really from one person to another. And really, in those circumstances, the general trend is that the strongest members of the group continue to shine, and those who are a little bit more challenged continue to be challenged. So you need to be particularly attentive to them. There are also personal circumstances that vary quite a lot. Like many people have at that level had young families. So like you can do what you want, but when you have two youngsters essentially running around, there's not a lot you can do. So it was essentially first making sure that the reactions varied quite a lot. So some of them were very serene about this thing. Others we felt needed like regular contacts. As a rule, we essentially put a system where we would have every week, especially at the beginning, a member of our management team, like the managing partner and members of the management committee of the firm, who would we would call twice a week everybody, all the associates in the firm. One day of the week, it would be the managing partner or a member of a managing team, and the other day would be the practice group coordinator. So I had my list, they had their list. And the good thing is we didn't have full confinement, so I was able to continue walking while making these calls, one way to stay healthy. But like we invested a lot in keeping in touch with everybody, and we really saw a real impact on the morale of the team, on the engagement of the group, and we saw that many other firms did not do that, and that we really saw the difference after a few months.
Oh, I'm listening to you, I'm learning. So I think that my takeaway, my keyword from you is really constant communications. And it did work. I mean, plus or minus, personal circumstances. Now, probably you've talked about internal communications, Luis. Why don't we push that a little forward? So how do you keep the young lawyers in touch with clients? Pre-pandemic, and Joseph is a client here, it would have been easy, for us, when you would be seeing this, it would have been easy, say, for partners or senior associates, the more senior ones, to just ask the younger ones to join meetings, to probably observe. For the more senior ones, probably to meaningfully contribute to discussion, just observe. Has there been a degree of cutback insofar as interaction of the young ones with clients? And most of the time, it's now the more senior people, partners, the more senior ones who would be in touch with clients. Has there been a cutback in your case, Luis?
Not particularly, in the sense that we face the same issues. Like, first, the technology actually made it easier to have the youngers attending meetings. Like, you don't have, it's easy to join a Zoom. It's always, the issues are always questions of proportion, making sure that you have the right number of people on the team, and that there's a clear communication with the client as to, if you bring someone else for training, Joseph is not going to see that person's time on the bill. So it's
ours again.
Yeah, but that's always has been the case, and there's always a tension between trying to get the young associates involved as much as possible, versus the client who says, I don't have to pay for that, and the client is right. So, and sometimes it's necessary to have them, because having them in the meeting is going to improve the output. Sometimes we also recognize that it is for their own training. So it can easily create tensions with the clients if it's not handled properly at the outset. But when you tell to the client that so-and-so is going to join us, because I want that person to get involved in the meeting, that's fine. I'm not going to charge that person's time, but it's also a balance. At the same time, it's not a rule that anytime an associate joins a call, because that's an associate, the time shouldn't be charged, because it's gonna, there's value in that associate being present. So it's a question of judgment. It's a question of client relationship. Some clients are very open to that. Some clients are extremely
strict.
Yeah, for lack of another term.
We should be careful.
Okay, so it depends, and it's the same with court, by the way. It's always the beauty of hearings by video conference is that you can easily hop into a call and essentially just be on the listening mode and see what's happening. It's not easy to bring a third. We typically have small teams. Our litigation team would typically be 2, maybe 3, except in very large files. But if you have 2 or 3. Bringing the third in court is usually tough for many reasons. It's much easier to bring that person in a video hearing.
Really? Oh, that's very interesting. Wen, what's your experience, have you been I know you're working in teams as well with your projects. Has there been a cut back insofar? So like in your case, you deal primarily with the clients, less of the younger ones participating compared, for example, if you were in the office, you just bring in these people for a quick chat with clients?
Well, first of all, I fully agree with what Luis has just said. Sometimes we have to take into account what the client may think if we are, letting that certain number of members of the team are joining the Zoom. The client may have concerns. Are you going to charge for these additional participants or not? But if the client is fine with this and is actually members of the dear team that are fully involved in the transactions, I think that having now virtual meetings is a great tool and also a great opportunity for the young lawyers to participate more in the transaction, be more involved in the transactions. Of course, in the pre-COVID era, we had when depending on where the meetings were hosted, there was a restriction, there was a limitation of number of attendees. But now by holding meetings virtually, I think that we have overcome this restriction. And somehow I would tend to think that somehow we are more efficient working because we do no longer need to have catch-up sessions with our team.
Okay.
Because sometimes, depending on the transaction, the size of the deal requires, X amount of lawyers from different teams, different areas. So now, going through using Zoom or Teams or whatever any other platform, or the necessary, of course, reasonable number of lawyers that are actively involved in the deal could join that meeting. And the flow of communication is much easier.
Really? So in your case, it would seem that work from home is even probably more advantageous to the young ones because in your case, they are able to participate, catch-up meetings, more efficient at the end of the day. Now, Joseph, we've been talking about interacting with clients. Is during the work from home, the situation that we are in, do you find reaching out to your external lawyers more difficult, easier, does not make any difference? Do you get a little more anxious? Because it seems now since everyone can probably just log in a Zoom meeting, do you get a little more anxious with more people attending Zoom meetings with you? What is the situation from your perspective as general counsel?
I think on my end anyway, it's easier to contact external counsel. They're just a phone call away, essentially, even if I can't reach them via email or the computer. It's easy to call them up. What seems to have suffered as a result of the pandemic is the work product. And it's not necessarily the fault of the firm. It could be because, for example, it's harder to get documents from government agencies. If we had filed a case, it's harder to serve summons on the defendant because the sheriff doesn't want to come out of his house, So getting hearings to move from one phase to the other has become more difficult. So that, for me, has been the most affected by the coronavirus.
Okay, but do you see any difference? Has there been any, for example, change or in the level of, say, do you see a difference in the participation of the so-called the young ones in your projects from your external counsel? Or do you basically deal with the more senior ones now, ever since the work from home mode came in?
I actually don't see a difference. I see both junior and senior lawyers responding to, depending on whether they're negotiations or real deals happening. It's pretty much the same, I think.
That's good. That's good to know. So that means to say technology, is really working for all of us, both from the part of the law firms and also from the part, being able to connect with clients. Now,
And I
looking,
think,
go ahead, please.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I think even before the pandemic, and I mean, people were really delivering work product via email. So post-pandemic, I mean, it's still the same system where you get to see work product when it lands in your inbox and not
Mhm.
necessarily by having to meet them.
Okay, probably all the better for Mother Nature. We use less paper these days, and just deal with them in their electronic format. Well, the fact that in the Philippines now we even have a digital and electronic notarization system, which I could not imagine probably 10 years before. So moving into the social side, Luis already talked about communication, being cohesive, and they started to do that with phone calls, engaging them. Now, I did mention initially, I miss the physical contact. I miss when was saying, it would be nice to have coffee. Coffee over Zoom is different from coffee in a coffee shop, or even the relaxed, unplanned lunches or cocktails. I'm going home. Oh, I bump into someone. Hey, would you like to drink, have a quick supper before we go home? So tell us, please share with each other and the rest of our participants. What are your award-winning initiatives for your young lawyers to keep them engaged within the firm, within their peer groups? Uh, JT, Joseph, can we start with you, please?
Um, what we did as a team was, in order to lessen the stress, was to have once a week meetings with the lawyers, with the young lawyers, and try to talk about stuff that wasn't related to work at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be a sharing session perhaps, or we would have electronic games where we would post embarrassing questions like, have you ever lied about your age, or have you ever been caught on camera doing something? So,
Okay.
being the most senior lawyer in the bunch, I would be forced to cough up small prizes like a sketch or a small
Mhm.
sculpture. It's like, okay, for this week, this is the prize, and that would that would go to whoever won the particular game of the week.
That's great. So, how often do you do that? Yeah, I mean, how long have you been doing this, engaging the younger ones?
Uh, Probably this is the fifth month.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Because you know the tradition in the law firm, we have Friday clubs, and that has continued. So we even now have cocktails delivered to our homes in special packages, and everyone learns how to do cocktails. I think we have done that about 3 times. What about your law firm?
Well, I think that we are not yet on the virtual quarter state yet, but what we have been doing since March is having weekly course with the whole team, as we said, just to make sure to keep the team cohesive, and so that we feel that we are still connected and we are not working alone at home. And this course started in March, actually it was like twice per week. But
Mm.
at some point, I think that was like, too much, a bit too much. So now it's once per week with the whole corporate M&A team.
Uh-huh.
And we try to, it's like a checking call to make sure that everybody's doing well. We do not only talk about work-related issues, but we also share how we are feeling, what we have done, for example, during the weekend, and I think that's also a good way for reaching more people of the team, because we are a lot of lawyers here in Barcelona in our team. And before, it's like you talk more to your peers, to anybody that sits by your side, but not the other lawyers that are in other teams. And in this way, we can reach to more people of our team. And also we have like how to call it, it's like Yamel, it's something like Facebook, but it's not Facebook, and it's only for internal use that all the lawyers of our firm can access. And we have created a lot of groups. And so they are like groups related to classical music, rock music, or books, reading club. So there are a lot of things ongoing there.
That's
Yeah.
great. So you have like the equivalent of in Pinterest sort of group, like a club for various. But you did not have this pre-pandemic, pre-work from home.
Yeah, we
You,
already had that, but now these groups are much more active now. So we never get bored.
that sounds great. That is basically a great idea. Luis, I know you've been talking about cohesiveness, cohesion, engaging. What about on the social side? Have you hosted any of these virtual, whatever, lunches, cocktails uh, for the young ones? How do you keep the social side going, so to say?
Well, like your firm, Mia, we historically have had Friday evening cocktails, and we continued that all over the spring. We actually stopped when summer began, and when we tried or we considered redoing that early this fall, like we were told, we may not need that at this time, but actually now we're starting to redo that in a different setting. It's going to be essentially not only litigation, but it's going to be we're going to create a smaller group of associates at their firm, and they'll be able to do that. The litigation partners meet every 2 weeks over drinks, at least over drink time, so they can do what they want. And then the associates also meet. Well, there is an associate lunch which always has been scheduled every 2 weeks. It's typically between themselves so that they can discuss, share, vent, and do whatever they want behind our back.
Without partners in attendance.
Exactly. So that hasn't like they do that from time to time, but I think like as you've seen, like we've done, we've erred on the side of over communication. So I think that they kind of like I'm not sure they do feel the need to see each other every 2 weeks at lunchtime, but they have that ability if they want to take it. But it's really between themselves.
That's great. So, I mean, it's Joseph. Do you have anything that to add to any of this? Social life.
Well, I guess what I've been planning to send little tokens. Of course, I'm spoiling the surprise now, right? I'm planning to send little tokens, especially if we reach Christmas, which I think we will. So my Christmas gift will be
whether we like it or not. Okay.
So that's pretty much it. Preparing for Christmas by sending little somethings to the young lawyers, and hopefully that's going to capture their hearts. If it doesn't, they're in trouble.
Okay. Probably one last question. We're about to wrap up. What about clients? Have you had any socials with clients during this period? Probably not in the early days of the pandemic, but have there been sort of social interactions with client along the same lines as probably internal lunches and internal cocktails? When? What about Cuatro Casas? Are you doing anything along that line?
I think that what we have been doing the most is holding webinars on legal updates. And to believe me, this has been a very active year in terms of legal updates. And other than that, we are also hosting sessions where we invite speakers from different sectors, for example, from the healthcare industry or public authorities members, and also clients, so they can share with us very interesting insights on certain topics. And we extend these sessions to our clients so they can also join with us. But at this point, we are not holding virtual cocktails or virtual dinners or lunches. Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Particularly with the restrictions on the number of people who can gather.
Yes,
In the
exactly.
Philippines, no Christmas parties because we are not allowed to have people more than 10 in any gathering. So say goodbye to Christmas parties this year. Luis, what about you? Any sort of virtual socials with clients? How
Yes,
you
we've put
engage?
together what you've had in terms of cocktails delivered to your home. We've done that with clients. So we've put together virtual cocktails, virtual dinner. We teamed up with a local restaurant who would essentially bring for virtual cocktails, bring all the cocktail kit. So you would choose either mojito or this or that. They wouldn't deliver alcohol, so you need to like, but essentially everything else would be there. And you would essentially, it was pretty informal. You would just set up a meeting at a convenient time, and we would try to limit that. We've like after, I don't think that, I think it works best in a 3 or 4 person max setting. And yes, we've done that quite a lot, and it's been noticed.
Oh, great. Well, I had my first Zoom dinner last week with a dinner box brought to my home, and everyone logs in at a particular time. So it was great. It was really great meeting friends. It was a birthday party. So it's a new experience actually, but it was fun. It was a good way to renew ties with friends, really. So I think we have just about 3-4 minutes to wrap up. So I would like to say thank you to
Mia,
yes,
we
Ashley.
have 2 questions.
Oh, sorry. We have
Yeah.
to. Oh, sorry. Can you pull up the results of the last survey, please? I almost
Yes.
forgot. Okay. Wow. How great. There is consistent interactions, distant social event with project or case team, then followed by, partners, then the bigger practice group. That's good to know. Partners, senior officers, and managers come, and of course, clients. That's a little difficult to do at this time. Cocktails, wow, 100%. That's a perfect score. And virtual dinners and sending of token gifts, sharing the same place at 20%. Hey guys, we're all doing the same thing, whichever territory. That is good to know. Thank you, Ashley. And you did say we have a couple of questions.
Yes. So some of you have formal and informal policies for working from home. Do you think the pandemic is going to make your work from home policies more strict or relaxed?
When would you like to go ahead and answer that, to be followed perhaps by Louise? Because I think I can see here the second question is specifically for Joseph.
I think I'm more relaxed because, as I said before, our formal pilot program, flexible working program, consisted of working up to remotely up to 20% of our time. But we, at least in the pilot program, we needed to choose either, we want to use all that time in a single date, or we wanted to spread that in different dates. But it was like something fixed. But now I would say that after the pandemic, we will have it should be more flexible. So we should be able to work remotely X amount of time, of course, but when needed, and not on fixed days.
Okay, so I think the answer is it's going to be towards the more relaxed mode, because I would imagine, having developed the experience and on work from home mode, I think everyone is starting to become more comfortable. Luis, what about you on that question?
Same here. You're not going to be able to put the horse back in the barn forever. Like it's and we have already, like, we're considering hiring people, and it is part of the conversation at some to a certain extent. I think we will need to have face-to-face time, and it's going to remain very important, more than people may realize. because that's what culture is all about. But it will be, I believe, part and parcel of how we work essentially for the rest of our professional life.
Thank you. And I think there is a second question, which is specifically addressed to you, Joseph. As an in-house counsel of our client of law firms, what advice do you have for firms or lawyers trying to maintain or build business relationships with clients?
Sure. What I've found very useful, I think, from our law firms is um, a lot of the firms that we have very close relationships with have tried to make themselves relevant by being proactive and saying, there's this new regulation, have you heard about this? And we think this will impact your business by this way. So they constantly feed us the data and the regulations that we need without us even having to ask for it. CSIP, I know, has a lot of regular bulletins that come out like probably every month, and that's very
Or even early?
appreciated. Yeah, other
Yes.
law firms, in fact, have daily updates as to the COVID regulations that are coming out. Um, those have been very useful. Of course, it gives us more work. It gives us more thing to crunch and to chew on every day. But at the end of the day, it really helped us trying to survive this pandemic.
Okay, so I think if I have a keyword there, it's still the constant flow of communications. I think communication is a consistent keyword here in this panel, whether internally, within the project teams, the bigger group of the practice group, or within the law firm and even beyond. So Ashley, do we have? No, I think we've answered all of the questions. So, and I think time is up as well. I think first I would like to thank the attendees. We do hope that you have some takeaways here. For me, technology has really come to the forefront. So, like it or not, everyone, the youngies, they're in the front lines, the oldest probably at the back, they need to catch up. But technology, equipment, software, platform is very important. I think that is a key element for the very smooth transition, particularly of Patrick Casas and Davis here. So we started with some flexible work hours, work from home, recruitment tools, but now that's a reality for all of us. And as Luis put it, we are not getting, we're not putting the horse back in the barn anytime soon. Cohesion, getting the team always together. And how do we do that? Constant communication, the pep talks, the rara talks. In the case of Joseph, probably it's Christmas time tokens. We remember them. Very important to get the morale up. We try to substitute the mentoring, the face-to-face, the observation, the shadowing, perhaps with just more Zoom time, more checking up on our younger associates. And they do appreciate that. And I guess for me, I have learned so much from this team tonight. And I do hope that our attendees learned as much as well. So I would sign off and say thank you very much, Joseph, Luis, and
Thank
Wenwen.
you.
Thank you, Mia.
Ashley, Tori, thank you very much for the tech support and the rah-rah-rah as well behind the scenes. And most of all, thank you for the attendees to the 2020th Fall E-Conference of the World Law Group. So again, this is our team saying good morning, good afternoon, and this time, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
And
night.
Thank you.
happy
Bye.
Halloween.
Bye.
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 Bye bye.
Bye-bye.